My father left us for a 21-year-old and said, "She's your new mom." Years later, he came back broke and begging, but my mother already owned everything he lost. I was just 15 when my life turned upside down. One summer afternoon, I came home from school, expecting to smell my mom's cooking and hear the soft hum of the TV playing in the background. Instead, I walked into a living room so quiet it felt like something had died. My mother was sitting on the couch, her eyes swollen and red, clutching a crumpled tissue like it was the only thing holding her together. And then I saw him, my father, standing beside a young woman who couldn't have been older than 21. She had a bright smile, perfect makeup, and wore clothes that made her look like she was headed to a party, not someone's family home. My dad looked me straight in the eyes and said, "This is Jessica. She's going to be your new mom now." Couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of horrible joke, but the look in my mom's eyes told me it wasn't. She didn't even argue. She just got up, walked past me like a ghost, and locked herself in the bedroom. That was the moment I knew everything was real. My father, a man I once thought was a role model, had abandoned us in broad daylight for someone barely older than his own son. He didn't even try to justify it. He just told me that he deserved to be happy, that life was too short to be stuck in a loveless marriage, and that I'd understand when I was older. Then he picked up Jessica's bags, gave me a pat on the shoulder, and walked out. For months, my mother barely spoke. She functioned like a machine, cleaning, cooking, going to work, but her eyes were empty. She never cried in front of me again after that first day, but I could hear her at night, whispering my father's name like a curse, then begging God to help her understand what she did to deserve this. I was angry too, but I didn't show it the same way. I pushed myself in school, worked part-time jobs, and promised myself that I'd never end up like my father. If anything, his betrayal made me want to succeed more than ever. My mother wasn't a weak woman. Once the shock wore off, she started changing in ways I never expected. She took night classes, got a new job with better pay, and slowly began rebuilding her confidence. I watched her go from a silent shadow of herself to a woman who walked with her head held high. She even smiled sometimes, not the forced smile she used to wear around my father, but a real one. The kind that comes from knowing you survived something that could have broken you. Meanwhile, my father seemed to be living his best life. Social media was filled with photos of him and Jessica, on yachts, in resorts, driving expensive cars, toasting champagne in rooftop restaurants. I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. It felt like he got to walk away from the wreckage he caused and was rewarded for it. But deep down, I knew that kind of life never lasts. People who burn bridges eventually run out of roads. Years passed. I graduated college, got a decent job, and watched my mom continue to thrive. She ended up becoming a partner at the law firm where she worked. She even bought the house from my father during the divorce, a quiet little power move that he didn't seem to care about back then. She also acquired some shares of the business he used to own, thanks to a legal loophole he didn't read closely. She never talked about it with spite, but you could tell that deep down, she took a certain satisfaction in watching herself rise while he was too busy partying to notice what he'd given away. Then one day, everything changed again. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when the past finally came knocking. Not metaphorically, but literally. I had just come home from work, tossed my keys into the bowl by the door, and was heating up leftovers when I heard a knock that didn't sound like a stranger's. It was hesitant, slow, the kind of knock that carries shame. I opened the door and there he was, my father, but not the man I remembered. He looked older than his years, with wrinkles carved deep into his face like regret made flesh. His clothes hung off his frame like they didn't belong to him. The spark in his eyes, that arrogant confidence he used to wear like cologne, was gone. And Jessica? Nowhere in sight. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thicker than the rain falling outside. Then he looked down at his feet, shifting like a nervous child, and whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside, letting him into the warmth of the house he used to own but now stood as a monument to everything he'd thrown away. My mother was in the kitchen, her back turned, But as soon as she heard his voice, soft, fragile, and desperate, she froze. He tried to smile, tried to rebuild a bridge with words that meant nothing anymore. "I made a mistake," he said. "Jessica left me, took what little I had left. The business failed after I sold off those shares. I had no idea they'd be worth so much." His voice shook as he continued, "I'm living in my car. I've got nothing left. Please, just let me stay a while. Just until I can get back on my feet." That's when he did it. Something I never thought I'd see from him. He fell to his knees, right there on the hardwood floor, and started begging. He begged my mother to forgive him, begged her to let him back in, said he was lost, that he'd been blinded by youth and lust and the illusion of freedom. "You were the only woman who ever loved me, right?" he cried. "I see that now. I was a fool." His hands clutched her waist as he sobbed, and for a moment, I thought maybe she'd soften. Maybe she'd show him the mercy she showed everyone else. But then she stepped back, slowly and calmly, like she was watching a stranger collapse. She looked him in the eye, her voice as steady as a storm ready to break. "You didn't just leave me," she said. "You left your son. You didn't just pick Jessica. You chose yourself over everything we built. And now you want to come back because the fantasy crumbled? This isn't your home anymore. This isn't your life." She pointed to the door. "You sold your shares. You gave up the house. Everything you let go, I picked up. And I didn't do it for you. I did it because I refused to let you be the end of me." He didn't move. He just sat there, still kneeling, still trembling. "Please," he whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." My mother crossed her arms. "You found a new life once. Find another." Then she walked away, not because she didn't feel anything, but because she had finally learned that some people only return when there's nothing left to take. I helped him up and walked him out. The rain hadn't let up, and neither had the weight in my chest. As I closed the door behind him, I knew that chapter was finally over. My father had come back to a world that no longer needed him, and my mother? She had already won. Not out of spite, but by simply choosing to live without the people who tried to break her. Like stories of truth, justice, and cold closure? Then hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share if you've ever watched someone fall into a hole they dug with their own hands.